We don't have any numbers to talk about yet. We'll get that tomorrow. That's still the plan. You'll roll those out. You've got a good sense. I think we heard the word last resort been used a few times by you as taxes. You've seen what some of these cuts are potentially going to look like.
Yeah.
Is that still a last resort for you, or are taxes going to have to be part of this new budget?
Still a last resort for me. So we've spent, I think this is day 42 on the job. So we've spent much of those 42 days diving into this budget shortfall that I've inherited. And so it's a huge, complex budget, as you might imagine. So there's still a lot of work ahead. I want to be clear. What we're announcing tomorrow is not the end of my engagement on this or the end of the savings we think we can achieve, but it's our first cut through the budget and saying we believe we can literally cut billions of dollars without raising taxes. Is that going to get us all the way there? Of course not at this stage. The good news is we still have 2 months of a legislative session ahead of us, right? We're about a third of the way into the session. We have a couple months to go. So hopefully this will give the legislature significant savings. Some are tough choices. I want to be clear about that. Some are tough choices. Others are what I would consider good government, that most Washingtonians would nod their head and say, yeah, that makes sense. Government should do that anyway, whether you have a budget shortfall or not. So it's a combination of those things, but that's been my focus, is the savings, the efficiencies, how we can do things better.
The Senate and House Democrats this week released their list. Essentially, it was Governor Inslee's all cuts budget. We heard from them today talking about it be devastating to schools and healthcare and state services. They're hoping that raises the appetite for people to say, okay, we've got to have some kind of taxes. You say these cuts won't get us all the way there. Do you envision, when you sign the final budget, that taxes will be part of that?
Too soon to say. We literally have more than 2 months before the session's over. What I can say about the cuts that I'll be proposing tomorrow, that's no cuts to K through 12 education. That's no cuts to our current investments in public safety. In fact, we accept almost all of the additional investments in public safety that Governor Inslee proposed. I think we accept all of the investments from K through 12 education that Governor Inslee proposed. If you are a Washingtonian receiving a direct benefit, for example, hey, you're on Medicaid, for example, you're still going to be on Medicaid after these billions of dollars of cuts. If you're getting cash assistance in some way from the state of Washington right now, you're still getting that after the billions of dollars in cuts we're proposing. So again, I'm not saying they were easy, but we worked really hard to preserve what we would consider core services, in fact, still making investments in those core services going forward.
Medicaid may not be as reliable as it has been in the past. We know what's coming out of Washington, D.C. That's something you're watching closely. I know the budget writers are.
To put it mildly, yeah, Drew. I mean, it's still difficult to answer that because, well, first, of course, we're deeply worried about what's going on in D.C., and I've spoken in the past at a press conference about that. So that is something we monitor very, very closely. There's litigation around that the state has brought successfully that has paused those cuts to the states from the federal government. Dollars we're entitled to, by the way, that Congress has decided upon. But we're mindful that things are chaotic back there and things could change. All the more reason why we as a state need to go through our budget and tighten up as much as we possibly can, in part because we need to adopt a balanced budget, which we will as a state, but also because there's the unknown. What could be coming down the road after the legislature wraps up in late April that could impact our budget?
Some of these cuts, I mean, you talk about what's sort of untouchable, but parks, other human services, transportation, these are things that people will potentially be impacted by. What do you say to those who say he's bringing Doge to Washington State, that you're cutting some of these things that people may say, hold on?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, any comparison, I mean, what's coming from DC on the budget cuts is chaotic is an understatement. It's insanity. I mean, right, just firing people left and right, whether they're good performers or not, no matter how core their service is to the people of a state or a country, it's insanity what's going on at the DC level. In contrast, as you might imagine, your viewers won't be surprised, I've been involved in every conversation. Any decision, I'm involved in that decision, right? We're sitting down at the conference table, we're having a robust conversation. These are proposals coming from agency heads. I asked every agency head, hey, give me your suggested cuts and efficiencies, and we go through those. Many of those I accepted, some I said, you know what, I'm not prepared to make that cut, right? I'm not prepared to make that cut. Give me another alternative. Some we bookmarked, where I'm like, you know what, I need to know more about this. As you can imagine, we had to move very, very quickly. I've not had months to prepare for this. We literally had 43 days. And so, Drew, there have been a number of things that have come to me where I thought, you know what, I'm interested in pursuing that. Maybe there's a savings there. Maybe we need to reevaluate how much we're investing in that program, but I can't make that decision on this timeline. I need more time, I need more information. So in contrast to DC, I would say we're being extremely thoughtful. What I also would add is these are my suggestions to the legislature. There's a whole lengthy public process that goes forward between now and a budget being adopted 2 months from now. So part of this is being transparent to people. These are things I think are achievable, so it couldn't be much different than what we're seeing in DC.
Today we heard Senator Peterson say that K through 12 meals for all, great idea, but just not this year. There's just not the money there. Are you willing, that could die tomorrow or Friday. Are you willing to give up that? That was one that you called out in full support of.
Yeah, Senator Peterson's a good friend of mine, I've known him for a long time, so I'm still working hard on that. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
Not dead in your opinion.
No, and look, things related to the budget, as you know, right, can last for a long time in the legislature, regardless of cutoffs. The investment of $100 million for more law enforcement officers, that is very much alive and going forward, something I believe in and is necessary for me to sign a budget. So, no, I've got my priorities. The legislature knows what those are. They're going to have their priorities. That's the way this process works. And come April, when we get our next revenue projection for the state, we have a better sense of how much we can save through these cuts and efficiencies. We're going to have a conversation about how do we balance this thing. And it's important for your viewers to know, by law, we must balance the budget. There is no alternative. That's got to happen.
One cut I have heard on X that you're proud of is this carpet.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the deal with the carpet?
So my understanding is I think it was like $70,000 to replace the carpet, which, by the way, I appreciate that someone in state government thought, hey, a new governor's coming in. It's been 12 years. Maybe it'd be nice to have a new carpet, which, believe me, I appreciate. I mean, I really, this is not a criticism of anybody, but when I got the news, they just said to me, hey, Bob, by the way, for a few days, they'll be putting in a new carpet. I said, well, wait a second, how much is that? And I think it was about $70,000. And look, to your point earlier, there are some cuts that I'll be proposing tomorrow that are difficult, right? And we can't at the one time say we're cutting programs that are good programs or delaying implementation. You'll see a lot of that, delaying them for down the road if our revenue situation's better. We can't at the one hand say that and at the same time have someone say, well, Ferguson's getting a new carpet. This carpet looks pretty okay to me, right? And we're trying to be methodical. We're not going to catch everything. I heard today about they were going to come in and clean the chairs behind me. Whether they need a cleaner or not, I don't know, Drew. I just said to him today, no, let's not do that. I can't remember how much that is, but it's a few $1,000s. And one thing we are also doing is communicating to all state agencies that as an example, that look, I will be irritated, if I see in any state agency things like carpet cleanings going on right now. And I realize it's a huge operation. Things slip through that are just best of intentions, right? I get that. But I'm trying to communicate out, hey, we're putting this on hold because of the situation we're facing. I'm expecting every agency head to know their budget at the same level I'm going to know my budget, okay? And so well, look, we understand $70,000 isn't going to solve a budget shortfall, but hey, it's still $70,000, and it sends a message, which I think is really important to everybody in state government.
No new carpets.
No,
it's a bumper sticker.
There's a time and place for them. I want to be clear. And again, I appreciate the fact that somebody was thoughtful enough to think, hey, we want to have a nice, clean office for the new guy. But that's one that can be delayed.
And throughout the whole corner office, not just your specific office, I mean the hallways and.
I believe it's the hallways right out here as well. You'll want to check with the team. So I don't know the details. I know that this was a part of it, I think, down the hallways, yes.
Picture. We may want to ask for a picture of that hallway just so we have that.
You bet.
Last thing I want to talk about, you did not go to the National Governors Association meeting last week. The reason I saw was you wanted to stay here on the budget.
Yeah.
Anything to do with our relationship with the President of the United States?
Oh, no, I had plane tickets purchased. I mean, plane tickets were purchased. We'd RSVP'd, everything was pretty much lined up. But it was, I think the weekend before I was going to leave was maybe a holiday weekend, and I was working on the budget and doing Zooms, and it just became clear, if we're going to get to the goal we have of saving billions of dollars, we had a lot more work to do and some hard decisions to make. And I just felt getting on a plane and going to DC just wasn't going to pencil out. So that was really all there was to it. I feel bad I missed it. I'm a new governor. I want to develop relationships with governors across the country of both political parties. The timing really was not ideal.
You saw what happened with Governor from Maine, Janet Mills.
Janet Mills, know her well, yeah. Former Attorney General out there.
She said, "See you in court."
Yeah.
The President Trump, made you could argue a threat that she needs to get in line. What is your reaction to that, and what do you think about what she had said in that setting?
I mean, first, I just will say that generally in those settings, the goal is you've got people of both political parties there, and generally one's trying to find common ground, how we can work together. I have lots of meetings here with Republican leadership. We do not focus on areas we disagree on. We work hard to focus on things we can work together on. I think that's just common decency. That was not the case with President Trump. Am I surprised by that? No. But I know Janet Mills, former Attorney General. She most certainly knows how to articulate her perspective, and I wasn't surprised that she did that there. And so, look, more globally, we're mindful of things that are going on in D.C., but the state's been bringing litigation to stop everything from birthright citizenship to these crazy cuts from the federal government, and winning over and over and over again, just like we did when I was Attorney General. So I don't expect that to change.
And when you know that the federal government can impact our budget situation here,
Yeah.
and you know that he has made threats,
Yeah.
investigations or cuts,
Right.
or cutting off aid, does that play into your decisions at all, knowing that if you do speak out,
Yeah.
the state may have to pay for it?
I mean, it's a good question. It's something I think about a lot. And I don't know what the right answer is. I'll start with that. A different governor might have a different perspective. I guess what I can say from my perspective is I think that my job as governor is to stand up for the values of our state and to articulate that in a way that's fair and non-inflammatory, but just direct about who we are and what we believe and what we're going to do. And I'm not going out of my way to pick a fight with anybody, but if those values are threatened, like the withholding of hundreds of millions of dollars for Washington State that we are entitled to, well, we're going to stand up to that, and we're going to go to court if that's the right way to do it. And so, just about every day I've got to think about how I'm going to articulate something or think about something, and I'm doing my best to balance that in a way that makes sense for the state, but also dealing with the federal government that we have to work with on some level. That is important. And so I'll do the best I can to balance that out in a way that makes sense.